Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Chris Beers.
And I'm Stephanie Cox. We're here today to bring you breaking news, in-depth analysis, and information to power your day.
Today we are covering the House Committee on Homeland Security's hearing titled Examination of Iranian Regime's Threat to Homeland Security. The committee chair is Mark E. Green, a Republican from Maryland. And this hearing on the Iranian regime's threat to Homeland Security comes after the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th. Hamas is backed by Iran, widely known. Also, Iran-backed groups attacked U.S. bases last week in Iraq and Syria. And U.S. Customs and Border Patrol released a memo that's stating, in the past year, we've seen a record number of terrorist encounters by Border Patrol, 169 in total. All of this as we tune into the hearing on the Iranian regime's threat to Homeland Security. Let's dive in.
The purpose of this hearing is to receive testimony on the threats posed by the Iranian regime to the homeland. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. There's no doubt that the Iranian regime poses a significant threat to the United States, homeland, and to our allies. This threat is real and it is growing. Tehran continues to furnish weapons, funding, and training to its surrogates across the globe who engage in heinous acts of terror. On October 7th of this year, which coincided with the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, the world witnessed the horrific and grotesque atrocities that occurred in Israel. Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization backed by the Iranian regime, launched this deadly, multi-pronged land, air, and sea attack inside Israel, with terrorists infiltrating Israel's southern border and firing thousands of rockets from Gaza. Over 1,400 Israelis were killed, with a significant number being innocent civilians, women, children, and the elderly. More than 2,800 Israelis have been wounded, including some in critical condition. At least 32 Americans were killed in Israel, and an unknown number of Americans are also being held as hostages by Hamas. The sheer brutality of these acts of terror is horrific. It's hard to watch the videos. Hamas terrorists hunted down hundreds of young people innocently celebrating at a music festival to murder and rape them. They killed a grandmother and then used her phone to post her murder on her own Facebook page. They murdered a young man, and his girlfriend filmed the murder on the man's phone and texted the barbaric video to his mother. They raped and murdered women and then paraded their bodies in the streets. These monsters murdered and burned helpless babies. They massacred whole families. These innocent people were killed for merely living in the state of Israel and being Jewish. Let me be clear to anyone who's listening. Hamas isn't motivated by some territorial dispute. Much like Nazi Germany, these terrorists are driven by a deep hatred of the Jewish people. Their stated goal, as mentioned in their charter, is the annihilation of the state of Israel and the extinction of the Jewish people. As we are currently seeing, Hamas routinely uses civilians, women, and children as human shields. The whole world must see and hear exactly what happened. It is disgusting and appalling that so many apologists have not condemned these barbaric acts of terror. I've been shocked at the horrifying anti-Semitism being displayed in some of our cities, on our college campuses, and even in the halls of Congress. Anything but a complete condemnation of Hamas and their brutal atrocities is unacceptable. We must stand with the state of Israel and give our unwavering support as Israel defends itself against the heinous attacks by Hamas. We also must condemn the forces behind Hamas, the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime is the muscle and the money empowering this reign of terror. For years, the Iranian regime has provided financial, military, political, and diplomatic support to various proxies, including Hamas. They use these terrorist groups to attack Israel, and Americans and our interests across the globe, even in our own backyard. The Iranian regime and its surrogates maintain a presence in the Western Hemisphere. Just this year, the Iranian Navy docked warships in Rio de Janeiro, and the regime held high-level meetings in the capitals of Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. Iranian-backed Hezbollah also maintains a presence in the region. The terror group has operated throughout South America for decades and has carried out attacks on Israeli targets in Argentina. Hezbollah has also worked closely with the drug cartels in Latin America to traffic drugs across the globe and launder money for these transnational criminal organizations. These threats are closer than most Americans realize. And that's because of our porous southwest border. Under President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas, the volume of known gotaway crossing our border has skyrocketed. And so has the number of individuals who appear on the known or suspected terrorist watch list, and the number of special interest aliens, which are people from countries identified as having conditions that promote and protect terrorism or possibly present a national security threat to this country. I'm extremely concerned that terrorists will exploit these glaring vulnerabilities at our southwest border to attempt attacks inside the United States. Just a few weeks ago, one human smuggling group with significant ties to ISIS moved Uzbeki nationals into the United States, and some of these individuals smuggled into our country still remain at large. This should concern every single one of us. This administration's policies and its misguided decisions have appeased tyrants and created significant national security vulnerabilities. The Biden administration's display of weakness on the world stage, from the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan, weak posture towards Russia before the invasion of Ukraine, to reckless negotiations with Iran, threatens our homeland security and our national interests. History's clear. Appeasement doesn't work. While the Biden administration was busy cutting deals with the Iranian regime, Hamas was preparing for its attacks. Kowtowing to tyrants and their proxies is always a mistake. This administration is continuing to repeat the same mistakes of the past.
You are watching a hearing hosted by the House Committee on Homeland Security titled Examination of Iranian Regime's Threat to Homeland Security. We were just tuning in to Committee Chair Mark E. Green, Republican from Maryland. He was talking about the real and growing threat of the Iranian regime and what that threat constitutes. He spoke about giving weapons to their surrogates around the globe. We spoke earlier before that clip of the hearing about how Hamas, the group that attacked Israel on October 2nd, was funded by Iran. And he also talked about all the atrocities that Hamas committed to Israel, just refreshing our memories.
Yeah, and when we think about terrorist attacks, it's not necessarily like regular tactics of war, right? So he pointed to the fact that women and children were also targeted just as equally as men, and some of the awful things that were done, including posting people's dead bodies to their own Facebook accounts after they had been murdered. These are really horrific acts of destruction that are almost unimaginable.
Right, and it's been a few weeks since the attack, but it needs to remain fresh in our minds as the U.S. decides how to handle this situation going forward. There was an instance where an Israeli coroner, it's hard to describe, but it needs to be described. This person was describing a body they found that they thought was one body, charred, but they couldn't really tell because it was charred so badly. When they did some kind of scan on it, they found that it was actually two bodies, a mother and child embracing as they were burned to death. These are the atrocities Hamas has committed on the Israeli people, and it's not a mere act of war. It's been called crimes against humanity.
Yeah, that's right. And one point that the chairman made as well was that Hamas is not driven by a territorial dispute. That may have come across in some way as a misconception through all the discussions that are going on about this. But actually, we know that Hamas really just wants to eradicate Israel, and it wants to eradicate the Israeli people. So that's also worth keeping in mind when we're amid all these talks about ceasefires and what's the path forward towards peace. We've got to know what the intentions are of each of these parties.
That's right. And he spoke, of course, about condemning the forces behind Hamas. And he's talking about Iran here, funding. He says Iran is the muscle and the money empowering Hamas. He says they use these groups to attack Israel and Americans, groups like Hamas, groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, as well as the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and many different types of groups all around the Middle East and around the world.
And Iran, as the chairman mentioned, has been supporting and funding various proxies all around the world. So their intentions run wide and deep, and worth really drilling into here and watching this closely, which is what we're going to tap back into the House Committee's hearing on the examination of the Iranian regime's threats to homeland security. Check that out.
We'll be back with that after a commercial break. And just in closing, before we do, the chairman also mentioned about how President Biden he says, been appeasing terrorists, and his weakness has brought this to the fore. So we'll see how the next step concludes. All right.
Anyone who's ever sold a home will tell you it's really hard. And it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we take care of every detail.
My Towels solved a problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made My Towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of My Towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring spun cotton that makes My Towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get My Towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all My Towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now.
MyPillow.com. Kindness is cool. Because we feel happier when we do good. Kindness connects us with others and improves our self-esteem. Simple actions, meaningful lives. Let's practice kindness, share our love, and show our care for one another. Submit videos of kindness to Gangjing World for prizes up to $10,000 in cash. For more information, visit gangjingworld.com.
A friend of mine, she told me about Bonatti. He was the only one to address all 4 discs as quickly as possible. And if you're to that point where you can't take it anymore, like I was, do your research, find out who the best is, and get it done.
Bonatti succeeds where others fail.
Have you ever helped a fellow veteran?
Of course.
Yes. Have you ever asked for help yourself?
It's always tough, right? I always feel like I can solve my own problems, but eventually, you just can't deal with it on your own. And you start to question, maybe people would be better off without me. When you realize that you're not alone, once you take that first step, there's so much support.
Thank you for staying with us. We're tuning in to the House Committee on Homeland Security's hearing titled Examination of Iranian Regime's Threat to Homeland Security. The committee chair is Mark E. Green, a Republican from Maryland. And this hearing comes after the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, which, as we know, Hamas is backed by Iran. It's becoming a more and more widely known fact. It also comes as Iran-backed groups attack U.S. bases in Syria and Iraq just last week. Let's dive back in to the hearing here.
Good morning to our witnesses. We're glad to have you. As we begin today's hearing on Iran's threat to our homeland, I want to express my deepest condolences in the wake of the horrific terrorist attack in Israel. On October 7th, Hamas, a proxy of the Iranian regime, tragically slaughtered more than 1,400 men, women, and children, including at least 30 Americans. We pray for them and their loved ones. We also pray for the innocent civilians who died in Gaza and are mindful of the humanitarian crisis there. As I said, in the immediate aftermath of the heinous attacks, the United States condemns Hamas actions and stands in total solidarity with Israel against terror. Since the attacks, President Biden and his administration have shown true leadership, not just words, but action, demonstrating ironclad support for Israel. The president has deployed 2 aircraft carriers groups to the Eastern Mediterranean and sent Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and Secretary of State Anthony Blinken to the region to signal strong support for Israel's security and engage in critical diplomacy. The president himself traveled to Israel to reaffirm the United States' commitment to Israel's security. He's also made clear he has no higher priority than getting back the Americans who went missing in the attacks. Unfortunately, as the Biden administration has worked to support Israel, bring Americans home from the conflict zone, prevent a wider war in the region, and address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the House of Representatives has been AWOL. Because of their failure to elect a speaker for the last 22 days, the House has been unable to conduct any legislative business. I thank our witnesses for coming back to this hearing. I know you were here last week. Some flew in from California, but such as it is, maybe we'll have that issue resolved today. I hope so. We need to get on with the business. We haven't even been able to pass a bipartisan resolution in support of Israel, of which I'm a co-sponsor, authored by Mr. McCall and the ranking member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Mr. Meeks. Some of my colleagues on the other side have acknowledged this extraordinary, troubling situation. The former chairman of this committee, Mr. McCall, who currently chairs the Committee on Foreign Affairs, recently said, and I quote, "I look at the world and all the threats that are out there, and what kind of a message are we sending to our adversaries when we can't govern, when we are dysfunctional, when we don't even have a Speaker of the House?" I agree with Mr. McCall. He is correct about Republican dysfunction and the message it sends to our adversaries around the world. Unfortunately, Republicans are trying to deflect attention from their own infighting by criticizing the Biden administration. For example, we've heard misleading statements about the administration giving Iran access to $6 billion in Iranian assets currently held in Qatari accounts. The truth is, not a penny of that money has been released, and the Biden administration and the Qatari government have agreed to block Iran from accessing it. Republicans are also engaging in fear-mongering about Hamas-affiliated individuals at our southwest border. The truth is, CBP has confirmed that no indication of Hamas-directed foreign fighters trying to enter the United States. I hope that congressional Republicans will stop their politically motivated criticism of the administration and instead focus their energy on electing a speaker so the House can pass legislation to help the people of Israel and strengthen the U.S. national security. There's much to be done as Iran and other adversaries like Russia, North Korea, and China continue to pose serious threats to the United States. As we examine Iran's threat to the homeland today, I'm concerned about targeted terror attacks from Iran and its proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah. Terrorism-related concerns about Iran are well-founded. According to the U.S. State Department, Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism. The Iranian regime has implicated in assassinations, terrorist plots, and terrorist attacks in more than 40 countries since 1979, including several plots or attempted attacks in the United States against Americans. I'm also concerned about the Iranian regime's cyber threats to the homeland. According to the U.S. intelligence community's 2023 annual threat assessment, and I quote, Iran's growing expertise and willingness to conduct aggressive cyber operations make it a major threat to the security of the U.S. and allied networks and data. I'm particularly concerned about Iran's opportunistic approach to cyber attacks and whether U.S. critical infrastructure is susceptible for targeting by this regime. To discuss these issues today, I'm grateful we have Mr. Thomas Warwick on our witness panel. Mr. Warwick has 40 years of experience addressing threats from Iran, including more than a decade at the Department of Homeland Security dedicated to counterterrorism efforts. I look forward to hearing his assessment of the most significant threats to the homeland for Iran and steps Congress should take to address these threats. I thank the entire panel for joining us today. Mr. Chairman, in closing, I want to say that I hope Republicans can overcome their chaos and dysfunctions so that we can return to regular order and resume the work of the American people sent us here to do. It's long overdue. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
We're tuned into the House hearing on the examination of the Iranian regime's threat to U.S. homeland security. We were just watching Representative Benny Thompson. He started by expressing his condolences to the people of Israel, to the Americans who are held hostage there, their families, as well as the families of those who've been killed, and to the Gazan civilians who are under the grip of the Hamas leaders of Gaza.
And he also voiced his opinion that Biden has been supporting Israel well, showing strong support there, sending aircraft carriers, sending top officials over in a show of support, and also working to obviously release American hostages. But he criticized the House Republicans for holding up progress within the House in terms of a bipartisan resolution to show support for Israel at this time, saying that, you know, the inertia that the House is facing right now is really holding back those efforts.
That's right. He's saying the House is absent without leave. They've been speakerless for the past 22 days. You know, they can't pass a bipartisan resolution condemning the Hamas attack at this point. And you held up a quote that said, "What kind of message are we sending to our adversaries when we don't have a Speaker of the House?" And I'm sure, you know, Hamas is looking at the U.S. and saying, wow, you know, I wonder what other kind of opportunities for future attacks we'd have. I mean, yeah.
One of the things that Republicans have criticized the Biden administration for in terms of Iran is the release of $6 billion in the hostage negotiations recently for in a hostage swap for American hostages. But he made an interesting assertion here, which is that not a penny of that $6 billion has been released, which we'll have to look into and double check, but that's interesting because a lot of people had pointed to this release as interesting timing in terms of it coming out just before the attack on Israel.
Right, and this money being released, it was to be tightly regulated and to be given to humanitarian needs over an extended period of time. But even so, it's still $6 billion to a country that's not that large. And, anybody looking at their finances would say, well, maybe we can count on another $6 billion here for humanitarian aid, and we can divert current fund resources allocated for those purposes to other things, perhaps like terror attacks.
Right. And another assertion that the representative made was that the CBP has said that no Hamas-affiliated fighters have been found trying to cross the southern border. That's an interesting assertion there. We'll also need to verify it, but that comes at a time when the U.S. is citing a lot of an increase in terrorist threats coming across the border. And we assume that some of them might be connected to Hamas, but we'll have to look into that further.
But it's interesting that actually contradicts what a CBP report said earlier just recently about the possibility of Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists as well as other groups coming across the border, especially as we've seen 169 people on the terrorist watch list coming across the border in the past fiscal year. You are tuning in to our coverage of the House Committee on Homeland Security's hearing on the examination of the Iranian regime's threat to Homeland Security. We will have more from the hearing after the break.
This is it, the culmination of everything our young athlete has worked for these past months. He's filled with determination. You can see it in his face. Is today the day he overcomes? And here we go. There is no defense in the world that will keep him at bay. He's on fire. Nothing can stop him. Watch him as he heads towards the goal. Oh, he's blocked hard. But that doesn't stop him. He's a warrior. He's back up. His eyes are on the goal. He's set up for the shot. He shoots. Goal!
Achieving goals like this is only possible with the monthly support of people just like you.
Please call the number on your screen right now and give your monthly support to Shriners Hospitals for Children so other children can reach their goals too.
If you give just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, we will send you your very own Love to the Rescue blanket as a reminder of the love you're giving us. Because of monthly support of people like you, nothing is stopping me from achieving my goals.
And here we go. There is no defense in the world that will keep him at bay. He's going left. Oh, he fakes right and continues. Look at those moves. He takes the shot. Goal! Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, call again or go to loveshriners.org to give right away. Your monthly gift helps kids achieve their goals. Goal!
Is deep sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puretang.com to learn more.
Welcome back. You are tuned in to the examination of the Iranian regime's threat to Homeland Security, a House hearing by the Committee on Homeland Security chaired by Mark E. Green, a Republican from Maryland.
And we'll be tapping straight into that now. See you soon.
This hearing, unfortunately, is occurring in the aftermath after a heinous terrorist attack on our ally, our strongest ally in the Middle East, Israel. And what we witnessed on the tragic morning of October the 7th was nothing short of barbaric and horrible. It was the deadliest day since the creation of the State of Israel 75 years ago. And it was the deadliest day for Jewish people since the Holocaust. Israelis, Americans, and other foreign nationals died. Many were injured, and others continue to be held hostage, and their whereabouts are unknown. At least 32 Americans were killed in this attack. Let me repeat that. At least 32 Americans were killed in this attack, which makes October the 7th the worst attack on Americans by international terrorism since 9/11. More Americans were killed on October 7th than in the attacks on Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia in 1996, the USS Cole in 2000, the U.S. Embassy in Beirut in 1983, or the embassies in East Africa in 1998. What happened on October 7th was sickening. These evil and twisted Hamas terrorists, a foreign terrorist organization supported by the Iranian regime, who carried out this cruel and indiscriminate attack that targeted innocent women, babies, children, the elderly, and the entire Jewish population. These attacks should be universally and unequivocally condemned by all. And unfortunately, that has not happened. It's absolutely appalling to see mass gatherings celebrating the loss of life that took place that heartbreaking morning. These gatherings are nothing more than an attempt to not only whitewash the gruesome attacks, but also to deny what transpired on that morning and to push a narrative that could not be further from the truth. New York Mayor Eric Adams recently said, "We are not all right when Hamas believes that they are fighting on behalf of something in their destructive, despicable action that carried out. We are not all right when we still have hostages who have not come home to their family. We are not all right, and we're not going to say we have stiff upper lip and act like everything is fine. Everything is not fine. Israel has a right to defend itself, and that's the right that we know." And I applaud him for saying those words. The hateful rhetoric spewed at these gatherings have created an environment that has left Jewish communities isolated and concerned about their sense of safety and security. We must make it clear that every American has a right to live peacefully and securely in this nation. In addition, the horrific images from Israel that we have seen should invoke the raw emotions that many Americans felt in the fight against terrorism. It's a solemn reminder, and especially on this committee that was formed and created to help ensure that another attack like 9/11 never occurs again on our homeland. As I reflect on the recent tragedy that has unfolded in Israel, I cannot help but remember how the 9/11 Commission report explained that a contributing factor as to why we missed the threat indicators to foresee an attack on our nation was due to a lack of imagination from our intelligence agencies and national security experts. No one in our government could even remotely think that someone would use a commercial airliner as a missile. Yet we saw 4 commercial jets utilized on that morning of 9/11. And when you think you've seen it all, violent extremists are there to prove you wrong. Like before 9/11, none of us could imagine that terrorists would fly across the southern border on paragliders and slaughter innocent civilians celebrating life at a music festival. Yet these terrorists bulldozed and blew holes through concrete barriers, and thousands of terrorists ran through with little to no effort to begin their brutal assault. These attacks, unfortunately, have taught the world that violent Islamic terrorists are continuing to exploit vulnerabilities in the most ingenious ways. We must not lose sight of this reality, and we have to acknowledge the threats posed by these groups. We must also recognize that these threats pose a significant danger to the United States as well. Our border is far less secure than Israel. I know this because I personally led efforts to help promote the development of border technology between our two nations. The fact that even the most advanced technology could not stop these atrocities from taking place in Israel should keep us up at night here. Our nation has seen a record number of individuals encountered who have either appeared on the known or suspected terrorist watch list or individuals designated as special interest aliens. Just this year, over 150 people that we know about have been encountered at the southern border that match the terror watch list. President Biden must reverse course on his failed Iran policy. Appeasement does not work. We do not negotiate with terrorists. We know firsthand that the Iranian regime has tried to exploit weaknesses in our southwest border. Surely there is a risk that terrorists, including those backed by the Iranian regime, could take advantage of the glaring vulnerabilities and conduct attacks right here in our homeland. If we continue to remain naive about the security posture at our southwest border, then we are bound to suffer the catastrophic consequences that we just saw in Israel. The threat warnings and indicators from terrorist attacks in Israel should serve as a wake-up call to our nation and make us realize that these dangers are present, that they are real. We must secure our southwest border immediately. I would also be remiss if I did not highlight the fact that the Iranian regime is actively targeting Americans here on our soil. They have the desire, and I think they have proven through the green lighting of Hamas that they have the capacity. The regime has attempted multiple times to silence or exact revenge on government officials and private citizens who speak out against the regime's brutality. And I think we'll hear about that today. Multiple witnesses today have experienced this transnational repression firsthand, and I look forward to hearing that. Lastly, we must also recognize that authoritarian regimes like China, like the Chinese Communist Party, and like Russia are working to advance their strategic goals throughout the Middle East. The Biden administration has failed to lead on the global stage time and time again.
We're tuned into the House Committee on Homeland Security's hearing titled Examination of Iranian Regime's Threat to Homeland Security. We just heard from Congressman August Pfluger. He began by reiterating the October 7th attack by Hamas on Israel. He was saying that it was the worst attack on U.S. citizens since 9/11, and he went into the details of what Hamas did to Israelis that day, killing innocent women, babies, beheading babies, children, of course.
And also the then subsequent gatherings celebrating this attack, which he mentioned are just horrific to see, considering what went down. He also pointed to other leaders who are condemning the attacks. He reminded us that Mayor Eric Adams, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, lamented the attack, saying that we are not all right here in America. We're not all right based on, in response to what has happened, things have changed, saying that Israel has a right to defend itself.
That's right. And just coming back to those mass gatherings, celebrating Hamas's attack, calling for Palestinian liberation. A lot of people are wondering, how are our young people out there supporting Hamas, not condemning Hamas's actions? Well, this report by George Washington University might help us learn some more, we discovered recently. It's called The Hamas Network in America, A Short History. It details FBI wiretaps that reveal a nationwide Hamas network going back to the 1980s. They've been fundraising in the U.S., lobbying our politicians, influencing education in Islamic schools, teaching children to hate Israel.
Incredible. And when you think about, the other two of the recently dubbed axis of evil, China has been doing similar things in terms of the Confucius Institutes and other ways to infiltrate the U.S. These things often go unseen, but they're pervasive and have been happening for decades in many cases.
That's right. The Congressman Pfluger also talked about in 9/11 how there was a commercial airline flight was used as a missile to attack the U.S. Just reminding people here that we've been through something like this before, and we can remember how people in America felt in 2001 and the years after, and to this day, and in order to relate better to the people of Israel.
And how shocking that was. And he pointed to the fact that we need to recognize and keep in our minds that terrorists and extremists are continually coming up with new ways to target their victims that are unexpected. So that's why we need to be vigilant about anticipating what may come. Who would have guessed that, he said, paragliders would have come across the border into Israel, into a music festival to attack innocent civilians there. So there are all these ways that we can see that the threat is real, and it's often unexpected, of course.
Right, and he was comparing the U.S. border to the border of Israel. And he was saying that the U.S. border is significantly less secure at this point. It took a bulldozer to break through a giant gate at the Israel-Gaza border, whereas people coming across the southern border, there are certain places where Border Patrol is spread so thin, it can be easy to get through. Right.
So next up, we're going to hear more about, from witness testimony about what they've seen. We've got a remarkable slate of witnesses with in-depth knowledge on this topic. Let's tune back into the examination of the Iranian regime's threats to Homeland Security, a House Homeland Security Committee hearing.
After the break.
Did you know African elephants could become extinct in our lifetime? In fact, more than 90% are already gone. If we don't act now, they will disappear forever. But we can't do it alone, because when it comes to saving elephants, it's you plus IFAW, the International Fund for Animal Welfare. You plus IFAW together can help stop poaching, protect habitats, and save thousands of elephants. Call or go online right now to join IFAW.org and give $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. You can save elephants and the places they call home. Together, we can fund rangers to stop poachers in their tracks, protect the land elephants need to roam and survive, and provide loving care for those who have been orphaned so they can one day be released back into the wild. But the only way we can do this life-saving work is with you plus IFAW. So call or go online with your gift right now. With the monthly support of people just like you, elephants like Moses are alive and thriving today. It takes years of hard work from dedicated teams so orphaned elephants can learn the skills they need to survive in the wild. So please, call now or go online with your monthly gift. You can help provide the urgent care elephants need so this generation won't be the last. And when you use your credit card, you'll get this exclusive membership kit, including your very own IFAW t-shirt to show it's you plus IFAW standing together to help rescue and care for these majestic creatures. The danger for elephants is more urgent than ever before. That's why we need you. It's going to take all of us to help save elephants before they disappear forever. So please, call right away or go to joinifaw.org with your monthly gift, because together, you plus IFAW can save lives.
We're here on the global front line of the battle between communism and freedom.
The Epoch Times fights back against misinformation and big tech censorship by being independent and unbound to advertisers. And to help bolster our ongoing mission of bringing you information that legacy media and big tech don't want you to hear, we've established a car donation program called Cars for Compassion. Through this program, you can help us to continue to bring you independent and daringly truthful journalism and significantly impact somebody's life that needs a vehicle. Through Cars for Compassion, any idle vehicle that's just collecting dust in your driveway can be donated to us, and we'll provide your car to someone who needs transportation but is struggling to afford it. All you have to do is go to carsforcompassion.org. Let us know about your car, we'll schedule a pickup time, and we'll email you a tax-deductible receipt right after we sell your car. All you have to do is click the link down below, www.carsforcompassion.org. That's www.carsforcompassion.org.
Thank you for staying with us. We are tuned in to the examination of Iranian regime's threat to Homeland Security, a hearing by the House Committee on Homeland Security chaired by Mark E. Green, a Republican. This hearing comes after the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th. As we know, Hamas is backed by Iran. It also comes as Iran-backed groups attacked U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria just in the past week. And it also comes as the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency memo released recently stated that we've seen a record number of people on the terrorist watch list come over the southern border into the U.S. in the past year, ending on fiscal year September 30th. Let's tune back into the hearing on the examination of the Iranian regime's threat to Homeland Security.
The topic, the Iranian regime's threats to Homeland Security, is both timely and important. The Iranian regime is a danger to global stability and our own Homeland Security. It is the world's most prolific supporter of terrorism and determined to harm the United States and our allies. Today, we have an opportunity to explore exactly how Iran and its proxies seek to carry out their destructive ambitions and to move toward meaningful bipartisan actions to counter and contain them. This hearing comes at an important moment. Earlier this month, on October 7th, an Iranian-backed terrorist group, Hamas, launched a gruesome attack against civilians in Israel. These brutal terrorists murdered innocent civilians. They slaughtered hundreds of young people at a music festival. They kidnapped Holocaust survivors and children and U.S. citizens. Make no mistake, as President Biden said, the United States of America stands firmly and unequivocally with Israel and against the evil that is Hamas. This terrorist organization is a threat not just to Israel, but also to the United States and our allies across the world. Iran and its proxies present a clear and present danger to our homeland security, and we must identify ways that the United States can ensure the safety of our citizens abroad and here at home. Iran has attempted to conduct multiple assassinations on U.S. soil, including of U.S. persons. Multiple plots orchestrated by Iran have been dismantled in recent years, including an attempted bombing of a restaurant right here in Washington, D.C. Perhaps the most commonly used tactic by the Iranian regime is cyber warfare, as they seek to target U.S. businesses and infrastructure and government agencies with disruptive attacks. They and their proxies, like Hamas, are adept at using the internet to incite people to violence in Israel, in the United States, and elsewhere. And we know that individuals online supporting violence against both the Jewish community and the Muslim community here in the United States are being manipulated by Iran and its proxies to conduct acts of violence here in the United States. This is reprehensible, and we must redouble our efforts to combat terrorist organizations' ability to radicalize individuals here at home in the United States through the internet. I'll just say on a personal note, as a person of Jewish heritage, as someone who has experienced anti-Semitism and who just a few weeks ago, we had a bomb threat at the largest synagogue in my city that I live in Rhode Island. Thankfully, the individual who called in that bomb threat was arrested. I get chills when I hear the rhetoric being used by those who are seeking to commit acts of violence against Jewish people in the United States and around the world. The same chills that I felt on that day when white supremacists marched in Charlottesville, Virginia, chanting, "Jews will not replace us." And President Trump got up at the end of that day and said that there were fine people on both sides. So if we are going to call out anti-Semitism, if we're going to call out domestic violent extremism and the incitement of violence, yes, let's be prepared to do it everywhere. Let's not make this a partisan exercise, but an American one. We must also work to prevent the targeting of Iranian dissidents here in the United States. Ms. Ahmadinejad, thank you for being here today. I know that each time you speak out, and particularly in Congress, you put yourself at great risk. But your story is one that the American people need to hear. I am deeply troubled that the Iranian regime has the audacity to continue to try to reach inside the United States to harm you and other people, including a former Secretary of State who live freely in this country. But your presence here today demonstrates that their efforts will only redouble ours in resisting any acts of political assassination or violence on U.S. soil. We owe it to you and all the victims of the Iranian regime, including in Israel and Gaza, to set aside politics and work together in a bipartisan manner to contain and counter the Iranian regime and its proxies. Congress must also work to ensure the Iranian regime's reach never reaches our homeland to bring harm to our own people. The U.S. and Israel's intelligence and counterintelligence efforts failed to detect and prevent the attack that ensued on October 7th. And as a country, we need assurances that there will not be another intelligence failure that has the capacity to harm Americans either abroad or in our own homeland. That means empowering the Department of Homeland Security's intelligence enterprise, as Mr. Warwick notes in his written testimony, and ensuring that DHS has the full capacity necessary with appropriate privacy and civil rights and civil liberties checks to gather intelligence on Iranian activities and other security threats here in the United States homeland. It means ensuring that fusion centers are equipped to share intelligence with state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement who are on the ground protecting American communities. And it means making sure that no one in this country is harmed simply because they dare to speak out against the Iranian regime.
We are watching the House Committee on Homeland Security's hearing titled Examination of the Iranian Regime's Threat to Homeland Security. The committee is chaired by Mark E. Green from Maryland. We just heard from Seth Magaziner, a Democrat from Rhode Island. He was saying that he was talking about the danger the Iranian regime presents to the U.S. He said they're a prolific supporter of terrorism around the world.
And of course, this hearing will be about looking for solutions. He brought up one solution, which I found interesting, saying that we need to empower DHS to gather more intelligence on Iranian threats within the U.S. Of course, there is a delicate balance here and a question of protecting Americans' privacy and their rights alongside challenging these threats within on U.S. soil.
He also reiterated the deadly Hamas attack on October 7th, as we've seen all the speakers do so far. And it's worth just reminding everybody, it was a few weeks ago, but that is the background on which this hearing comes. This hearing on the threat the Iranian regime presents. Iran backed Hamas.
Right, and he pointed to one of the witnesses who will be testifying, or who testified after he spoke. She is an Iranian-born journalist who is within the U.S. and was targeted by Iranian intelligence services, helped by an Iranian-born U.S. citizen in an effort to kidnap her. And she's also testifying at this hearing today.
He also spoke about some other threats the Iranian regime presents. He spoke about how they've actually created plots to conduct assassinations around the world, including in the U.S., plots to bomb a restaurant in Washington, D.C., which was actually foiled. He talks about the cyber warfare threat that the Iranian regime presents, going after businesses and U.S. government agencies, and also using the internet to incite violence against people in the U.S., against their enemies, against Israelis. This sort of radicalization that happens in the bowels of the internet.
And also to attack U.S. businesses and government websites and functions to just disturb life here in the U.S. as much as possible. He spoke about events, a bomb threat in Rhode Island, saying that he has come close to this kind of threat, and in terms of anti-Semitism as well, that he regrets any of that's happening right now and hopes to put an end to it. But that wraps up our hearing, our broadcast of the House Committee hearing on Homeland Security in relation to the Iranian regime's threats on U.S. soil. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with more news after this break.
Anyone who's ever sold a home can tell you it is really hard. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we've helped thousands of people sell faster and for the best price.
Does this look familiar? You probably think this is what owning hearing aids would be like. Let me tell you, there's a better way. The Atom by Audien Hearing. The all-new Audien Atom is the world's first wireless charging hearing aid under $100. The Atom comes with an easy-to-use wireless charging dock. Plus, the Atom has a 22% smaller design, so it's nearly invisible when worn in the ear. That's why we have over 250,000 happy customers. Each pair has a 45-day money-back guarantee, so there is zero risk in trying them.
Call 1-800-918-3109. That's 1-800-918-3109. Call 1-800-918-3109 or go to audienhearing.com to get your pair of Audien Atom hearing aids for only $99.
Organize your freezer. Now keep your freezer fresh and long-lasting. Smart Freezer Container. Thanks Soyun. The magic of the freezer. Make efficient use of freezer space. Keep the freezer cleaner and more tidy. Easy to store modular system. Resistant from -22 degrees to 212 degrees. For family safety, BPA-free and LDPE material. Different sizes for different applications, depending on the size and use. Use it smartly. Efficient space utilization for cold air circulation. Neatly organized with minimal empty space. Partitions and trays for more efficient storage. Smart Freezer Container.
Thanks to Soyun.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Former President Donald Trump throws his support behind Mike Johnson, the GOP's latest nominee for Speaker of the House. We'll see if he can win the gavel this afternoon.
The UN chief rejecting accusations that he's showing sympathy for terrorism, saying he was shocked by the misinterpretations. Find out what he said about Palestinians.
President Biden looks to the Senate for a funding bill for both Israel and Ukraine. Republicans say they want to see changes to the president's proposal.
Social media giant Meta is under fire. The company is being sued by multiple states. What the lawsuit says about a youth mental health crisis.
Genetics testing company 23andMe informs customers of a breach. A hacker advertises millions of pieces of data at an online forum. Former President Donald Trump throwing his support behind Mike Johnson, the GOP's latest nominee for the Speaker of the House.
Trump made a short comment as he arrived at court today for the continuation of his civil fraud trial.
Mr. President, will you visit Capitol Hill for the Speaker of the House race to meet with House members in person?
I may, but I think Mike Johnson is doing very well. He's a tremendous congressman, respected by everybody. I hear it looks like it's really good. I haven't had one negative comment about him. Everybody likes him. Just respected by all, and that's something we need. and it looks like that's going to happen.
Trump posted on Truth Social that his strong suggestion is to go with the leading candidate, Mike Johnson. In Trump's words, get it done fast.
Mike Johnson's nomination comes after Majority Whip Tom Emmer failed to get enough support yesterday. Representatives Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan were also unable to gain enough support.
Former Speaker Kevin McCarthy wrote on X that Congressman Johnson is a principled conservative who has his full support.
The House is set to meet at noon today for a floor vote.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres rejected what he called misrepresentations of his remarks.
His words of Palestinian grievances had angered Israel. Here's Guterres clarifying himself today.
I am shocked by the misrepresentations by some of my statement yesterday in the Security Council, as if I was justifying acts of terror by Hamas. This is false. It was the opposite.
The UN Secretary General said yesterday that it's essential to understand the attacks by Hamas didn't occur in a vacuum. He said Palestinians have endured 56 years of what he described as a suffocating occupation.
In response, Israel's UN ambassador called for Guterres to step down. He said on X platform that Guterres had shown sympathy for terrorism and murder.
Guterres explained today that it was necessary to set the record straight out of respect for the victims.
He said besides addressing the grievances of the Palestinian people, he also made it clear that these concerns do not justify the appalling attacks by Hamas.
The head of Lebanon's Hezbollah meeting with the leader of Hamas.
The two terrorist groups reportedly met to find out how Hamas can win the war against Israel.
The news was reported by a TV station belonging to Hezbollah. The meeting included a Hezbollah chief, a Hamas deputy chief, and a top leader from terror group Islamic Jihad.
They focused on finding out what the so-called Axis resistance must do to win the war. That resistance includes Iran, Iranian-backed militant groups, Syria, and others.
Meanwhile, Israel's military today accusing Iran of ordering recent attacks.
Iran helped Hamas before the war directly, with training, supplying weapons, money, and technological know-how. Even at these moments, Iranian aid to Hamas continues in intelligence and incitement on the networks.
The Israeli military says Iran also ordered recent attacks by Tehran-backed militias in Yemen, Iraq, and Lebanon.
Israel also accuses Iran of helping stoke anti-Israel sentiment globally with an online propaganda campaign.
The spokesperson today also came down hard on the question of letting fuel enter Gaza as part of humanitarian aid shipments.
Fuel will not enter the Gaza Strip. Hamas uses the petrol for its military infrastructure. Fuel that Hamas stole from the United Nations should be taken back from Hamas and given to the hospital.
Hamas uses fuel to power their rockets, among other things. That's despite hospitals in Gaza also needing fuel to power their generators.
Meanwhile, the United Nations says 20 trucks were due to deliver aid to Gaza via Egypt on Tuesday, but they reportedly haven't crossed the border yet.
And the Jerusalem Post reports that Israel recently killed a Hamas commander.
The commander reportedly killed multiple Israelis over the years. The outlet says he planned multiple attacks against Israeli soldiers and civilians dating back to 2002.
Pentagon officials say U.S. troops were attacked 13 times within the past week at outposts across the Middle East. The attacks were carried out with both rockets and drones.
The Pentagon says troops in Iraq bore the brunt of the aggression, with 10 separate incidents reported.
U.S. forces in Syria faced 3 attacks during that time, with 24 U.S. soldiers wounded in 2 separate drone attacks.
U.S. Central Command says all 24 service members have returned to active duty since.
A funding bill for both Israel and Ukraine. Republican senators now say they want to see changes to the bill proposed by President Biden after his Israel trip.
It's pretty clear that the supplemental that was sent up is just a starting place. We're going to go over it with a fine-tooth comb As you can see, there's a lot of passion among our members about having a credible border security provision in there.
President Biden announced the funding request in an address to the nation. That was right after he returned from a trip to Israel.
Some Republicans previously criticized the request for including $60 billion for Ukraine, but only around $14 billion for Israel.
Many say the two countries shouldn't be included in the same funding package in the first place. Others are calling for more funding for U.S. border security, which stands at about $14 billion right now. Biden's pick for U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, gained support in the Senate. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee voted 12-9 to advance his nomination. Chairman Ben Cardin said he hoped a full Senate vote for Lew's nomination could come soon.
Last week, Lew defended his record related to the 2015 Iran nuclear deal at his confirmation hearing. Former President Donald Trump withdrew from the nuclear deal in 2018, a move supported by Israel.
Hamas terrorists might be entering the U.S. illegally. Border officials released a memo saying the group could be using the southern border to get in. We speak with retired ICE agent Victor Avila about this threat to U.S. national security. Victor Avila, thank you for joining us. A recent Customs and Border Protection memo states foreign fighters motivated by ideology or mercenary soldiers of fortune may attempt to obfuscate travel to or from the United States to or from countries in the Middle East through Mexico. What kind of threat does this illegal immigration of terrorists into the United States pose?
It's an incredible threat. It's a huge threat, and it's a real one. One that I could tell you from experience when I worked in Mexico and I was assigned to the U.S. Embassy there, that these individuals will take advantage of the open border. Most importantly, will take advantage of coming through Mexico because they know that there's not going to be any enforcement in Mexico. They're not going to be deported from there. As a matter of fact, they know that once they're in Mexico, they're as good as being in the U.S. And I've interviewed these individuals before when I worked there, what we call special interest aliens coming from these type of countries, special interest countries like Bangladesh, Somalia, Iran, Yemen, and such. And so we do see that because of the continued open border policy right now, what better way than to enter our country through that southern border?
And Victor, the report also mentions Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and Hezbollah. Is Border Patrol doing anything differently in response to this memo?
I wish I could tell you that they are, but remember, they're so overwhelmed with the numbers, especially the record numbers of illegals coming at this time, that it's almost impossible. But it's not that they don't want to, it's that the administration's policies in place do not allow them to do that complete vetting. And I'll give you an example like Hezbollah. Hezbollah has been using Mexico and working with the cartels for such a long time. Why? Because the cartels produce and generate billions of dollars. And these terrorist groups require some of that funding to continue to finance their terrorist activities. So it's very difficult for Border Patrol. If they were given the job back, the ability to do their job backs, it would be okay. But right now, because of this catch and release process, these individuals have the better opportunity to infiltrate us through there.
So you're saying these terrorist groups are getting funding from cartels?
Oh, yeah. There's been many cases where the Hezbollah and other groups, they recognize the money that the cartels generate. And so they will team up with them and for the purpose of getting some of those funds. The terrorists will do anything to be able to infiltrate us, but they do need financing. And that's one of the ways that they go about it. And remember, the cartels don't care. The cartels are terrorists themselves. So this is an imminent threat that we face in a national security issue that because of what's happening in the war in Israel is a wake-up call for us to really pay attention to what's happening on the southern border.
Wow, that really could be a whole story on its own. Now, border officials also announced a record number of encounters with illegal immigrants on the terrorist watch list for this fiscal year ending in September 30th. 169 people on the terrorist watch list, to be exact. How many of these could have plans to harm Americans?
Well, it just tells you that these individuals are on a terror watch list for a reason, and these are the ones that we know about. And the number you cite is just this last fiscal year. The total number under this administration, I think it's over 250 of them that we know about. But one stat I want to throw out there for you is one that's very mind-boggling for me, is almost 1.7 million known gotaways that a Border Patrol agent was able to detect either through a camera, a sensor. We counted 1.7 million people that came into the country that we were unable to go actually and grab. Why? Because they've been taken off the line. They've been doing other duties and processing illegal aliens. And so how many of these 1.7 million are part of these are on this terror watch list, or are not even detected at all that we don't know about? But we know that the agenda and the reason that they come to this country is to cause us harm. Why? Because they tell us.
Wow. Victor Avila, thank you so much for your time.
And hate crimes are rising around the world. London police say they've seen a more than 1,300% increase in anti-Semitic offenses this month compared to the same period last year. And Islamophobic offenses were up 140% in the wake of the attack by Hamas on Israel. Earlier, we spoke with Dr. Raleigh Washington, a co-author of the new book, Breaking Down Walls, a Model of Reconciliation in an Age of Racial Strife. Washington is also the president of Awakening the Voice of Truth. He's the third recipient to receive the Doctor of Peacemaking Award by Westminster College. That's after Mother Teresa and Desmond Tutu. And he's president emeritus of Promise Keepers. Let's hear that discussion now. Dr. Raleigh Washington, thank you so much for joining us. To start with, I want to take a moment to recognize that there are so many hate crimes. There's a rise in tension just all around the world, really. How can faith and spiritual guidance help us in these times?
I do believe that we're in a very difficult time. The division is not just normal, it's toxic. And I think it's that way because we're living in a cancel culture time when people won't really debate one another or listen to one another. It's my way or the highway. But I believe there's one word that can change everything, and that one word is relationship.
And what steps can people take to develop relationships during these difficult times across divisions?
Well, for me, easy, because as a Christian, I believe in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And his commandment is this. The greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. The second one is equal to it. Love your neighbor as yourself. So if you live your life according to our Lord, loving God and loving your neighbor, no matter who that neighbor is, you will satisfy every commandment in the entire Bible. So that mandate drives relationship.
What advice would you give to anyone who's struggling with forgiveness, in the face of hate crimes?
Well, the inability to forgive damages the person who has that inability, because you get angry, you get hurt, it's hard to forgive. The result of that is bitterness. And bitterness is not what someone else does to you. Bitterness is what you do to yourself because you just can't let it go. If you can learn how to forget what lies behind, if you can learn to forgive. See, the definition for forgiveness is to release a person from the responsibility of paying a debt. And if you don't forgive, even in the Bible, God says, if you don't forgive, he doesn't forgive. So forgiveness is very, very critical. But when you forgive, you release the person, but guess who else? You also release yourself. The inability to forgive results in bitterness.
Yes, forgiveness certainly is freeing. And how would you suggest that we could address the root causes of hatred within our society and prejudice?
Well, as I started, relationship is initiated by caring, respecting, and honoring another person. You develop a relationship in doing that. And a relationship means that you consider that person as equal or even better than yourself by honoring and respecting that person. And if you do that, guess what? Honor begets honor. You honor a person, that person will honor you.
Yes, that heart-to-heart connection. And when we're looking at Islamophobia and increased anti-Semitism around the world, you've done a lot of work to bridge gaps across religious lines as well. What steps can religious communities take to support those who are targeted by acts of hatred?
I really believe that the issue has to do with honor and respect. If you honor one another, you honor everything about that person. That really requires that person to honor you and live according to that definition and that code of honor. I believe there's a God of the universe. I believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I believe Jesus Christ is from that. I believe his 2 commandments is to love God and then love your neighbor as yourself. If that neighbor is a Muslim, if that neighbor is an enemy. The Bible even teaches me to love my enemies. And so if I can live and engender love in a relationship, I can establish relationships. And that's across religious lines. Now, we must understand that.
Absolutely wise words there. Thank you so much, Dr. Riley Washington. Great to hear your thoughts.
Coming up, more than 500,000 New Yorkers fled to other states in 2022. Where are they going and what's behind the exodus?
Hollywood actors and studios back to the bargaining table, looking to hammer out a new 3-year contract. More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
Y'all know me. Every day I'm hustling. I'm grinding and making deals because a girl loves her bling. But the one thing I don't have to hustle for is paying for expensive car repairs, thanks to CarShield. Plans through CarShield can protect up to 6,000 parts and systems in your car, including the engine, transmission, air conditioner, entertainment system, and more. That's right. CarShield administrators get cover repairs paid on the most expensive parts of your car, all for one low monthly rate that never goes up, for as long as you cover your car. That's their price lock guarantee.
I want to keep my car on the road as long as possible, and CarShield Administrators helps me do that.
I trust CarShield Administrators because they paid my claim.
Being an essential worker and a mom of 3, finances can be very tight at times. If it wasn't for CarShield, I wouldn't have my car.
And with their best coverage ever, CarShield administrators go the extra mile, including car rental options. You'll also get 24/7 coast-to-coast roadside assistance for flat or damaged tires, lockouts, dead batteries, and courtesy towing, all at no additional cost to you. That's right. You don't need to do any hustling for these extras. They're all included.
The cost will break down, there's no doubt about it. That's just the way it is. I got stuck with high repair bills before. That's why I called CarShield.
Nobody likes expensive car repair bills. That's why you have to call CarShield before you break down.
Darlings, if you want to be smart and get those car repairs paid, then call CarShield now. Leave the hustling to the professionals. Pick up that phone right now before your car breaks down.
Protect yourself from the unprecedented rise in costs for parts and repairs. Call now to save money with your price lock guarantee. Call 800-418-7697. 800-418-7697. 800-418-7697.
Do you feel the bills getting higher and higher every time you check out at the supermarket? Do you feel your monthly discretionary money has decreased, although your income increases yearly? Inflation is eating away at your wealth. Digital wallets and central bank digital currencies are destroying financial privatization. Only gold and silver are constitutional forms of money. Our privacy was to be protected against unlawful search and seizure. Midas Gold Group will help you take control of your finances and protect your wealth and your privacy. Pulling money out of the corrupt banking and investment system is a way to privatize your finances as the elite push us towards digital wallets and central bank digital currency. Protect your wealth with real money. Deal with the best. Midas Gold Group, a proud America First company. MidasGoldGroup.com.
Welcome back. Social media conglomerate Meta is under fire. The company is being sued by multiple states.
Meta is accused of fueling a youth mental health crisis by making their social media platforms addictive. NTD's Costa Jimenez has more.
Attorneys general of over 30 states, including California and New York, filed a complaint on Tuesday. In it, Meta stands accused of repeatedly misleading the public about the dangers of its platforms, which include Facebook and Instagram, as well as knowingly inducing young children and teenagers into addictive and compulsive social media use for its own profit.
As our state's chief law enforcement officer, and as a parent, there is nothing more important to me than ensuring the well-being of our children. And we know that in the era of social media, their mental health has never been more at risk.
According to the attorneys general, research has shown children's use of Meta's social media platforms is linked with depression, anxiety, and insomnia, as well as interference with education and daily life, and other negative outcomes.
Meta, which owns Instagram and Facebook, designed its platforms with harmful features designed to ensure children spend more time on their platforms, compare themselves to their peers, and receive constant notifications, making them lose sleep and struggle to pay attention in school.
We know that kids were and are being induced by Meta's Instagram and Facebook platforms to spend hours upon hours scrolling and being subjected to images and words that exacerbate a number of health and social issues.
Meta responded by saying it was disappointed in the lawsuit. The company's shares fell by more than 0.5% on Nasdaq following the lawsuit. Meta could face civil penalties of between $1,000 and $50,000 for each violation. The amount could add up quickly given the millions of children and teenagers who use Instagram. Multiple other states, as well as Washington, D.C., are filing similar lawsuits. The cases are the latest in a string of legal actions against social media companies on behalf of children and teens, including TikTok and YouTube. Much of the focus on Meta stemmed from a whistleblower's release of documents in 2021. They showed the company knew Instagram was addictive and worsened body image issues for some teenage girls. Children have long been an appealing demographic for many businesses, which hope to attract them as consumers at ages when they may be more impressionable and solidify brand loyalty. Costa Jimenez, NTD News.
And now we head to some quick headlines.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is suing the Biden administration. He's accusing the Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection of cutting razor wire positioned at the Texas-Mexico border.
The lawsuit says the government is illegally destroying Texas property and undermining the state's ability to stop illegal entry. The lawsuit also mentions that the DHS itself said the wire serves as a deterrent to prevent illegal crossings.
The suit further notes that the wire was installed in September when the U.S. saw record illegal immigrant crossings. A DHS spokesman told Fox News the agency does not comment on pending litigation. The Census Bureau reports that more than 500,000 New Yorkers fled to Florida, New Jersey, and other states in 2022, while more than 300,000 people moved to New York last year. The state still netted 250,000 departures.
New Yorkers are leaving for a variety of reasons, including high crime, high taxes, high rent, and high cost of living. A surging number of illegal immigrants arriving in the city and state has also had an impact.
Census data shows more than 90,000 New Yorkers headed down to Florida. About 75,000 moved across the Hudson River to New Jersey.
Connecticut took in some 50,000 migrants from the Empire State, and nearly 45,000 New Yorkers headed to Pennsylvania.
The Georgia Supreme Court has ruled that a state law banning most abortions after 6 weeks can remain in effect. A judge in Atlanta blocked the law known as the Life Act last year.
When the law was passed in 2019, Roe v. Wade still guaranteed abortion access nationwide. But after the Supreme Court overturned Roe last year, Georgia's highest court found the Life Act constitutional in a 6-1 decision.
A group called Sister Song and Planned Parenthood challenged the law. They argued the Life Act violates a right to privacy under the state constitution.
The Georgia law prohibits abortion after a fetal heartbeat is detected, with limited exceptions, usually around 6 weeks of pregnancy.
Genetics testing company 23andMe on Tuesday sent emails to several customers to inform them of a breach. A hacker advertised millions of pieces of data stolen from 23andMe on online platform this month.
The company said it was working with federal law enforcement and forensic experts to investigate the breach. Access to its DNA relatives feature was of particular concern.
DNA relatives allow users around the world to connect and share their personal data, including ancestry reports, matching DNA segments, location, birth years, and family names. Since news of the hack, many customers have expressed concern.
Some are worried their ethnicity and other sensitive information could be used against them if leaked. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy asked for more details on the leaks last week.
Son of Nashville police chief was found dead last night after allegedly shooting 2 officers over the weekend. Police say he shot himself in a shed after fleeing police in a car he stole at gunpoint. This stems from an incident in Laverne. John Drake Jr. was reportedly involved in a struggle with police before he pulled out a gun and injured the officers. At least one of the officers is now out of the hospital. The other remains in stable condition. Federal authorities have released more details about 2 million dimes stolen earlier this year. They were taken from a tractor trailer carrying the coins from the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia. The truck driver was bound for Miami when he pulled into a parking lot with a cargo of $750,000 in dimes on April 13th.
While he slapped 6 men made off with a portion of the 6-ton shipment, thousands of coins were left scattered all over the lot in northeastern Philadelphia.
The Philadelphia Inquirer reports that prosecutors estimate a total of about $235,000 in stolen dimes.
4 Philadelphia men face charges of conspiracy, robbery, theft of government money, and other charges.
And an award nobody wants. The top ranking on Orkin's list of the rattiest cities in the U.S. This year, the award goes to Chicago. Los Angeles was number 2 on the list. New York took the number 3 spot, with Washington, D.C. and San Francisco rounding out the top 5.
The rattiest cities list ranks cities on the number of new residential and commercial rodent treatment services. On its list of 50 cities, Orkin found the least ratty town to be Greensboro, North Carolina. And this may be Taco Bell's best Taco Tuesday ever. That's because the chain won its fight to end the trademark of the catchy phrase. A New Jersey restaurant was the lone holdout clinging to the trademark, but Gregory's Restaurant and Bar forfeited its trademark after more than 4 decades of owning it. Taco Bell scored a significant win in July when Taco John's, a smaller regional chain, abandoned its trademark registration in the other 49 states. Taco Bell said it fought to cancel the trademark because the commonly used phrase Taco Tuesday should be freely available to all who make, sell, eat, and celebrate tacos.
After a year and a half, there's finally a new leader for the Federal Aviation Administration. The Senate confirmed Michael Whitaker to a 5-year term on Tuesday. The position had been vacant for 19 months. Whitaker is a former Obama-era deputy FAA administrator and was recently an executive at a company developing electric air taxis. At his earlier confirmation hearing, he said the agency faces big challenges. Industry officials say the new chief's first priorities need to be staying on top of aviation safety and aircraft certification. Whitaker has said he also wants to prioritize technology improvements for the future of aviation. The FAA has been under scrutiny after a series of airliners close calls on U.S. runways, flight disruptions, and deadly Boeing 737 MAX crashes after the plane was agency certified.
Well, here's something you don't want to see on the plane you're about to board. It happened while crews were unloading a plane. This JetBlue airplane tipped up at New York's JFK Airport Sunday night. The airline says a shift in weight caused the tail to tip backward and the nose to lift up. It's not known if anyone was on board at the time, but no injuries were reported. JetBlue is reviewing the incident and says mechanics will inspect the plane before it flies again.
Self-driving robo-taxis are being taken off the road in San Francisco. California determined they pose an unreasonable risk to public safety.
The state's DMV suspended GM's self-driving car company Cruise yesterday. It said Cruise had misrepresented the safety of its autonomous technology.
The suspension, effective immediately, prevents Cruise from testing or deploying autonomous vehicles. It's likely a major setback for General Motors and comes after a series of accidents involving Cruise vehicles.
On October 2nd, one of the self-driving vehicles struck a pedestrian despite braking. The pedestrian had previously been struck by a hit-and-run driver.
Cruise said a human driver propelled the pedestrian into the path of the autonomous car, which then also hit the person. When the car pulled over, it pulled the pedestrian forward.
GM CEO Mary Barra said the robo-taxis have better safety records than human drivers. She has previously said Cruise is a giant growth opportunity.
SAG-AFTRA and Hollywood studios are set to resume talks today after negotiations for a new 3-year union contract picked up again on Tuesday. The meeting comes after the union presented its last counteroffer 2 weeks ago. The proposal was aimed at the union's streaming viewership, which would charge streaming services 57 cents per subscriber. That would create a pool of funds that could be given to members whose work appears on those services. The Alliance of Motion Pictures and Television Producers previously said the proposal would create an untenable economic burden. SAG-AFTRA members are also asking for restrictions regarding the use of artificial intelligence and higher wages. The SAG-AFTRA labor strike against the Hollywood studios began on July 14th, 2 months after members from the Writers Guild of America began their own strike on May 2nd. The Lantos Foundation has honored a former Canadian Justice Minister with its highest human rights award.
NTD's Sam Wong delves into the trailblazing career of Irwin Cotler.
On Tuesday, former Canadian Attorney General and law professor Irwin Cotler received the 2023 Lantos Prize on Capitol Hill. The award is the Lantos Foundation's highest human rights honor. It was named after the only Holocaust survivor to have served in the U.S. Congress, the late Congressman Tom Lantos.
So very humbled and moved by it because Congressman Lantos was a hero for me now that he's no longer with us, but he can inspire us in what we have to do as part of his enduring legacy.
Over the last 5 decades, Professor Cotler has taken on numerous high-profile human rights cases. Those he represented include prisoners of conscience in China, such as Nobel Peace Laureate Liu Xiaobo and Falun Gong practitioners. Cotler also warned of the rise of anti-Semitism across the globe following the Hamas's terrorist attack on Israeli soil.
At this point, you either stand for justice, for peace, for human rights, or you end up being on the wrong side of history.
Now, as violence continues to escalate in the Gaza Strip, China is once again playing neutral while making no comment on Hamas. In response to Beijing's rhetoric, the professor said that an evil alliance is forming on the sidelines, and the Chinese Communist Party is a part of it.
I'm not surprised because we've had a metastasizing axis of evil, so we need an axis of our common humanity of the community of democracies.
Annette Tilleman Dick, Congressman Lantos' daughter, said that Cotler's commitments in human rights make him a beacon of hope for people around the world.
So in him, we really have found a person who is the embodiment of what one would look for in a champion of human rights.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Sam Wong, NTD News.
Coming up, will your iPhone soon be less expensive and easier to fix? Apple announced its support for a right-to-repair bill. Find out what it means for you.
An immediate ban on selling AI chips to China. Find out what tech giant NVIDIA is saying about the export ban ordered by the U.S.
And California Governor Gavin Newsom was greeted by Chinese leader Xi Jinping. More on the surprise meeting in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
1 in 5 children worldwide are faced with the reality of living without food. No family dinners, no special treats, no full bellies. All around the world, parents are struggling to feed their children. Toddlers are suffering from acute malnutrition, which stunts their growth. Kids are forced to drop out of school so they can help support their families. COVID, conflict, inflation, and climate have ignited the worst famine in our lifetime. And we're fed up. Fed up with the fact that hunger robs children of their childhood. Fed up with the lack of progress. Fed up with the injustice. Help us brighten the lives of children all over the world by visiting getfedupnow.org. For as little as $10 a month, you can join Save the Children as we support children and families in desperate need of our help. Now is the time to get fed up and give back. When you join the cause, your $10 monthly donation can help communities in need of life-saving treatments and nutrients. Prevent children from dropping out of school. Support our work with communities and governments to help children go from short-term surviving to long-term thriving. And now, thanks to special government grants, every dollar you give before December 31st can multiply up to 10 times the impact. That means more food, water, medicine, and help for kids around the world. You'll also receive a free tote bag to share your support for children in need. Childhood without food is unimaginable. Get fed up. Call us now or visit getfedupnow.org today.
It's just clear as day. The media, whether it's broadcast, cable, or print media, has become extremely biased. And I started looking online for alternative ways to get information. And I saw an ad for a free trial. And I looked at it and I said, Epoch Times. I mean, come on, this is end of days type of stuff. I mean, what are they going to be talking about here? And I said, well, it's a free trial. Let me dig in. Is it giving me both sides? Is it giving me an objective point of view here? I have looked for opportunities to see where they might be biased, and I don't find it. It has given me a level of trust in media that I didn't think I'd ever get back. I love the Epoch Times because it has renewed my faith in the idea that a reliable, responsible, non-biased source of information is available. And I can say that I love it because of that.
Back to the news. It may soon get easier for you to fix your iPhone. Apple said that going to support a right to repair bill in the U.S.
This could be welcome news for anyone using an iPhone. Here to tell us more is NTD Business host Don Ma.
Don, how could repairs become easier?
So, Chris, first of all, just a bit of background here. This news comes after years of complaints from consumer advocates that Apple's devices are difficult and expensive to fix. Apple has built a regulation for high product repair costs. Chris, I don't know if you ever tried bringing your iPhone to Apple Store to fix it. It could cost hundreds of dollars in some cases. So following all those complaints, Apple Tuesday said it would make available parts, tools, and documentation needed to fix its phones and computers to independent repair shops and consumers nationwide. This could be a step in the direction here, Chris, for Apple. But, we still have to see if it actually makes a difference to consumers. We still have to wait and see if there will be an actual impact with people's experience in the real world. In the past, Apple has opposed independent repair services by limiting their access to the instructions and components needed to repair the company's products. But this stance has recently changed. This bill that Apple supports is the Biden administration's broader effort to promote economic competition.
So can you tell us more about that? The Biden administration's initiative to encourage economic competitiveness. Tell us more.
Yeah, so all of this is part of a broader push by President Joe Biden to promote competition and as well to crack down on so-called junk fees and other actions that potentially increase prices for consumers. The Federal Trade Commission Chair Linda Khan says restrictive practices used across industry raised costs for consumers, and It potentially stifled innovation as well, closing off business opportunities for independent repair shops and created unnecessary electronic waste as well. So this is a state-level right to repair law, and it seeks to assist consumers in cost-effective device repairs using tools and components shipped by the original manufacturers. This actually enables consumers to bypass challenging and costly repair procedures. So, of course, it's not just Apple that this right to repair bill is targeting. Linda Khan says that they've heard from healthcare workers and hospitals as well being worried that they would be unable to fix, for example, ventilators because the manufacturer was seeking to deny access to repair it. So, that's just an overview of that.
All right. Thank you so much, Don.
Thank you.
And now we head to some short headlines from around the world.
First, news out of Russia. The country is a step closer to withdrawing its approval of the global treaty banning nuclear weapons tests.
The parliament just completed the passage of a related law today. This was the last step for the bill in the parliament. It's now heading to President Putin's desk.
Russia says it will not resume nuclear testing unless Washington does, but arms control experts are concerned Russia may be inching toward a test that Western countries would perceive as a threat. Russia today also commented on China's nuclear capabilities. The Kremlin says it's not concerned about China increasing its nuclear arsenal.
Russia stressed what it called China's sovereign right to ensure its security. Meanwhile, China has launched its first nuclear-powered glided missile submarines. This gives it land and sea attack options that were once the exclusive domain of U.S. and Russian vessels.
Now over to the European Union. Poland's opposition leader is in Brussels today. He's advocating for the unfreezing of funds from the EU.
We have to use all, even non-standard, methods to save the money to which Poland is entitled, and which comes from traditional European funds and the Reconstruction Fund and so-called Coronavirus Recovery Plan.
Donald Tusk traveled to Brussels as the opposition leader. However, he's expected to become the next prime minister.
The European Union previously froze Poland's funds due to alleged concerns about judicial independence. The EU didn't agree with Poland's previous government, which had a strong sense of self-identity and wasn't always pro-EU.
In total, the EU is withholding around $100 billion from Poland. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky aims to become part of the European Union. He expressed hope that the EU accession talks will begin this year.
Zelensky says such a development would have a positive impact on Ukraine's people and its soldiers. He says motivation is also a weapon and it needs to be recharged. Zelensky finished by saying he expects this motivational boost for Ukraine to take place.
Meanwhile, Hungary is commenting on Sweden wanting to become part of NATO. The Hungarian government didn't approve Sweden's bid yet. All 31 allies must endorse the accession.
I spoke on the phone with my colleague Hakan Fidan, the foreign minister of Turkey, who informed me that the ratification of Swedish membership in NATO has been submitted to the Turkish parliament.
Hungary has so far refused a proposal to hold a vote on Sweden's bid to join NATO.
Turkey submitted such a protocol to its parliament on Monday. However, Hungary says that doesn't change its stance on the issue.
German police have arrested a terror suspect. The man is convicted Islamist militant and is suspected of planning an attack on a pro-Israeli demonstration.
Police searched the man's apartment north of Dusseldorf. According to Spiegel magazine, the suspect had searched online for pro-Israeli events and violent anti-Semitic content. It's unclear whether he already had a specific demonstration in mind for a potential attack.
A state interior minister urged people not to panic. He added there was no reason to stay away from future pro-Israel rallies.
One such event last weekend drew around 10,000 Israel supporters to Berlin's Brandenburg Gate.
Down under in Australia, a landmark ruling regarding cruise company Carnival and COVID. It's the world's first class action lawsuit win against a cruise ship operator.
The court ordered Carnival to pay the medical expenses of a woman who contracted COVID. The judge found that the cruise ship operator misled passengers about safety risks.
The court also ruled that Carnival should have canceled the March 2020 return voyage from Sydney to New Zealand.
The woman was awarded a bit less than $3,000 for medical expenses.
News out of South America, Peruvian police seized more than 3 tons of cocaine. The shipment was bound for the United States.
Meanwhile, Paraguayan police on Tuesday also seized over 3 tons of cocaine. That shipment was bound for Europe from a private port near the Paraguay's capital city. This is one of the country's largest drug seizures. And now the top news from around Asia.
Tech giant NVIDIA says the U.S. has ordered it to immediately stop sending its artificial intelligence chips to China.
U.S. regulators had previously given the chipmaker 30 days starting on October 17 to comply. It's unclear why the deadline has been moved up.
California Governor Gavin Newsom met with China's leader Xi Jinping in Beijing today.
Newsom is on a week-long tour of China to push for climate cooperation. Xi told Newsom that the connection between China and California was, quote, very close.
Newsom's trip is drawing attention as it comes amid heightened tensions between the U.S. and China. On climate, Newsom expressed his desire for continued collaboration and partnership.
California has an economy larger than most countries, and governors of the state have a long history of partnering with China.
Denmark is seeking to de-risk from China and instead to boost ties with countries like Japan. The Danish Prime Minister spoke with a newspaper, Nikkei Asia in Tokyo.
She said Denmark had been, quote, too naive when it comes to being too dependent on China. She added that Europe should produce more needed technology on its own soil.
Denmark has stopped accepting state scholarships for Chinese students due to fears of technology leaks to Beijing.
The country is home to many of the world's leading companies like wind turbines manufacturer Vestas and shipping company Maersk.
Canada and Taiwan have finalized an investment agreement known as Foreign Investment Promotion and Protection Arrangement.
It's part of Canada's plan to boost trade and influence in the Indo-Pacific region. Taiwan has been seeking more support from major Western democracies as it faces mounting military and political pressure from Beijing.
The agreement will also facilitate Taipei's entry into a major Pan-Pacific Free Trade Pact, of which Canada will hold the rotating chair next year. Beijing has also applied to join the group.
Canada has no formal diplomatic ties with Taiwan, but the two maintain de facto embassies in each other's capitals.
For the first time, Chinese developer Country Garden has been deemed in default on a U.S. dollar bond. Bloomberg reported, citing the notice to holders from a trustee.
It says Country Garden failed to pay interest on the note within a grace period, and the move constitutes an event of default.
Country Garden missed the deadline for a $15 million coupon payment last week. This triggered cross defaults in the company's other bonds, as is standard in bond contracts.
This is likely to spark one of China's largest corporate debt restructurings. The company has nearly $11 billion in offshore bonds.
A crowd-controlled drill kicked off in the capital of South Korea. It came just before the one-year anniversary of a deadly Halloween crush.
The drill took place in a busy and narrow alley in Seoul. A total of 150 volunteers were monitored by control room staff. The tragedy last year happened in a similar setting and killed 159 people.
The drill showcased an AI-backed program designed to detect and alert potential overcrowding. It consists of more than 900 CCTV cameras at more than 70 major locations.
They will analyze crowd movement and density and alert authorities when there are signs of danger. The warning system will come online on October 31st, the day of Halloween.
When we come back, how old is the moon? Scientists measure material from the lunar surface. What they're finding out and more after the break.
Anyone who's ever sold a home will tell you it's really hard. And it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we take care of every detail.
I'm Richard Karn, and I love my hose. It ain't those old hoses. This is my hose. The new Pocket Hose Copper Bullet, now infused with real copper, so your water is always clean and lead-free. Just turn on the water and watch your hose grow and grow. And when you turn off the water, away it goes. Our new inner tube uses 3 layers of high-strength latex on the inside. Then it's wrapped in a new polymer filament jacket, 3 times stronger than the other hoses. And I love the oversized, easy-to-grip fittings. Get the super light 25-foot Pocket Hose Copper Bullet today for only $29.99. But wait, call now and get our Turbo Shot adjustable nozzle, absolutely free. This is an exclusive advanced release of our 2024 edition Pocket Hose. Order now.
Call 1-800-617-2364 or visit copperbullet.hose.com. So call 1-800-617-2364 now.
My dad's name was David. He always talked about getting life insurance, and now it's too late.
No one was expecting my husband Dave to suffer from a heart attack. We didn't have life insurance. We thought we had more time.
Don't be Dave, and don't wait until it's too late to get the life insurance coverage you need. And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Call now to get affordable life insurance.
Just call
800-494-1562.
If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam, no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Remember, don't be Dave. Call now.
Call now.
800-494-1562.
Welcome back. Could the moon be 40 million years older than previously thought?
Scientists recently analyzed a key mineral in lunar samples, zircon. They dated the crystals to nearly 4.5 billion years ago.
Scientists say the dating the age of the material is helping them understand how the moon is formed.
The samples were collected by the 1972 Apollo 17 mission, the last time humans set foot on the moon.
During this expedition, American astronauts gathered nearly 250 pounds of soil and rock.
50 years later, new techniques are unlocking the secrets of the igneous rock collected during the mission.
We used the atom probe, which is a very new technique used in the semiconductor industry in the past. We introduced the technique to the geology recently. Basically, we counted the atom position one by one to see where they are. Then we confirm that the age of the mineral was authentic.
UCLA planetary scientist Zhang, who co-authored the study, says learning about the moon can help humans understand more about our home planet.
Moon has a very stable environment. It can record very ancient impacts or some other events on the Earth-Moon system. Then in this way, we can know what happened on Earth, because everything on Earth was wiped out by geological processes, by weathering, tectonics, by cycling of rocks. The moon is much stabler, so it's a key recorder of a lot of events that were not recorded on Earth. So knowing the crystallization or the solidification of the lunar surface, we are able to know a lot of things about our own home, Earth.
Oakland Zoo in California has a new addition to its giraffe herd, and she's adorable. Introducing Kendi, born just last week. The zoo says her name means loved one in Swahili. This little girl isn't so little. She's about 7 feet tall and around 150 pounds. The zoo says Kendi's mom is taking good care of her, showing her the ropes and successfully feeding her.
Oh my gosh.
So sweet. I love these pieces that we do on babies being born.
I know. They're so tall, these giraffes. Right when they're born,
Yeah.
but they're still so adorable.
Yeah, it's incredible how fast they grow and how fast they develop. Apparently they can run up to from 10 hours after being born.
You know, I couldn't run that fast very much after I was born, maybe a few years.
Right, yeah, fair enough.
Actually, a group of giraffes, a herd of giraffes, is called a tower.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I'll take that one away. Thanks so much for joining us today.
We'll be back with more news tips tomorrow.
And feel free to reach out to us at news.today@ntd.com.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selected videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.